Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Daybreak, as authorities begin investigating the cause of Monday's building collapse in Korea's southeast that killed 10 people, their focus is on the poor construction of the collapsed auditorium and lax management of the facilities. 9 people, including 2 police officers, have been killed in the Ukrainian capital Kiev as protesters and security forces clash in the worst violence in weeks. Plus, Korea's short-track speed skating team wins gold in the women's 3,000-meter relay in Sochi. Team Korea now stands 15th in the overall medal rankings. Daybreak begins now.
You're watching Daybreak on Wednesday, February 19th. I'm Choi Yusun in Seoul. A building collapse in Korea's southeastern city of Gyeongju earlier this week has claimed the lives of at least 10 people and injured more than 100 others. As authorities have launched a probe into the cause of the collapse, they're focusing on poor construction and lax management of the facilities. Our Oh Jin-ju has the latest.
It only took about 10 seconds for the roof of an auditorium at a resort hotel in the city of Gyeongju to collapse on Monday night. Some 560 students from the Busan University of Foreign Studies were in the middle of an orientation event for the freshman class when the ceiling started to crumble above a stage set up in the front. 10 people have been confirmed dead and more than 100 injured, with 2 people in critical condition.
Everyone was sitting comfortably on the ground, but then everyone was heading to the exits all at once, and it was total chaos.
As for what caused the collapse, the area had received a record level of snow over the past week, and the snow that had piled up on the roof was estimated to weigh nearly 150 tons. The building was huge at 900 square meters, but had no pillars to support the roof. Compounding matters, the ceiling and outer walls of the auditorium were made of sandwich panels, which are usually used to build temporary structures or storage spaces. Sandwich panels are made out of thin steel plates filled with styrofoam and are known to easily absorb moisture. Even though the snow seems likely to be the primary culprit, many experts are pointing to the weakness of the building structure as the main factor behind the collapse. The government and the police have launched an investigation into how the building was constructed to determine whether the auditorium was up to code or built shoddily. President Park Geun-hye, during a cabinet meeting Tuesday morning, expressed grief over the tragic incident and offered her condolences to the victims' families. She also ordered a thorough investigation into the cause of the accident. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Japan wants to hold high-level talks with Korea to mend their faltering relations, which have been sinking to new lows. The request comes ahead of U.S. President Barack Obama's visit to Asia in April. But with historical disputes still at the fore, the prospect of improved ties appears grim. Our Yoo-Rian has this report.
Korea-Japan relations, which remain strained due to territorial and historical disputes, took a dive in December when Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine, a shrine that honors World War II-era war criminals. In an aim to break over 2 months of silence and mend ties, Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida at a news conference on Tuesday expressed a will to meet with his South Korean counterpart Yoon Byung-se. He emphasized the importance of trilateral cooperation between Japan, the United States, and South Korea in the face of the threats posed by North Korea. Kishida had already conveyed hopes for high-level talks when he met with Korea's second Vice Foreign Minister Cho Tai-young last month in Switzerland on the sidelines of an international conference. The new call for talks comes ahead of U.S. President Barack Obama's visit to Asia this April. Earlier this month, at a meeting in Washington, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry urged Kishida and Japan to improve relations with Korea ahead of President Obama's visit. High-level talks do not seem imminent, however, as there's been no resolution to speak of on the historical disputes that divide Korea and Japan. Japan has yet to offer compensation to the so-called comfort women who were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the Second World War. And this Saturday, Japan will hold a controversial event stressing its claim to Korea's easternmost islets of Dokdo, or Takeshima as they are called in Japan, despite Seoul's repeated calls to scrap the event. Yurian, Arirang News.
In an apparent bid to improve ties with Korea, the foreign ministers from Korea and Japan met for the first time since Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the controversial war shrine in Tokyo. The Korean Foreign Ministry's Northeast Asian Affairs Bureau Director General Lee Sang-deok and his Japanese counterpart, Junichi Ihara, discussed ways to improve bilateral relations in Seoul on Tuesday, but details of that meeting were not released. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson Cho Tai-young said the meeting was part of a courtesy call by Ihara, who is currently in Seoul for a meeting of Japanese diplomats in Korea. The spokesperson meanwhile criticized Tokyo for its plan to hold a special event on Saturday to mark its territorial claims over Korea's Dokdo Island. President Park Geun-hye sat down for talks with a U.S. lawmaker on Tuesday and used the opportunity to call for a resolution on the issue surrounding Japan's use of sexual slaves during World War II. During a meeting with visiting chairman of the U.S. House Committee on Foreign Relations, Ed Royce, on Tuesday, the president said just 55 so-called comfort women who have gone through unrelenting suffering over their lifetimes remain alive today. President Park thanked the U.S. representative for taking the lead in Congress in support of Seoul's efforts to resolve historical issues between Korea and Japan, and for visiting a Comfort Women Memorial in Glendale. Representative Royce expressed support for President Park's vision for reunification with North Korea, saying it would pave the way to provide new opportunities for the North Korean people. More than 80 South Koreans will finally get to see their loved ones for the first time in over 60 years, as the two Koreas are about to hold a long overdue family reunions. Our Hwang Sang-hee shows us how the event will be carried out in the next few days.
War-separated family members from the two Koreas will meet with their loved ones Thursday for the first time in over 6 decades. The reunion event for families separated since the Korean War, the first in more than 3 years, will take place from February 20th through the 25th at North Korea's Mount Kumgang. 83 South Korean divided family members will gather in Sokcho, Gangwon-do province on Wednesday and spend a night there before crossing the inter-Korean border on Thursday morning. The elderly participants, most in their 80s and some in their 90s, will undergo a simple health checkup the night before their departure and receive instructions about how to conduct themselves in the communist states. On Thursday, they will travel by bus to the Mount Kumgang Resort, the site of the reunions. Here, the South Korean family members will be joined by 180 North Korean participants for the first round of reunions that runs for 3 days. The event will be composed of 6 total meetings, with the first 5 lasting for 2 hours each. The final meeting on Saturday will last just 1 hour. If the reunion event goes as planned, the separated family members have only 11 hours to make up for lost time. Millions of Koreans were separated from their families during the Korean War, and around 70,000 registered divided family members in the South are waiting to reunite with their long-lost relatives. With no telephone or letter exchanges allowed between citizens of the two Koreas, the occasional government-arranged reunions are the only chance they have. The humanitarian event is also an important barometer of inter-Korean relations. Just last September, the North called off a round of reunions amid heightening tensions on the Korean peninsula, disappointing hundreds of divided families on both sides of the border. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
China's foreign minister has reaffirmed his government's commitment to persuading Pyongyang to give up its nuclear program. Wang Yi said on Monday that China was resolute in its determination to denuclearize the North and also warned Pyongyang that there would be no troublemaking on its doorsteps. His message may be carried by Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Liu Zhenmin during his 4-day trip to the North that's slated for this week. Liu will be the most senior Chinese official to visit Pyongyang since the execution of Chang Song-taek last December.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
The legislature will convene a...
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. Last month, millions of people here in Korea had their personal information leaked as part of a massive data breach. On Tuesday, the two individuals believed to be responsible for that very incident had some tough questions to answer at the National Assembly. Our Kim Young-gil has the details.
It was the biggest data breach in Korean history, with millions of people affected. At a hearing on Tuesday, lawmakers heard testimony from the two main suspects in the case, an employee at the Korea Credit Bureau, a ratings agency who is accused of stealing the personal information of more than 100 million people from bank and credit card firms in recent months. He is suspected of selling the information to an advertising agency executive for 23 million won, or a little less than $22,000.
It was purely spontaneous, and I did it for personal reasons. I didn't give the data to a broker.
The majority of the 24-person committee said the man should be indicted for perjury. Both men, if convicted, could face up to 10 years in prison or a fine of up to $500,000. Lawmakers also presented evidence from their own investigations. One lawmaker presented evidence that a foreign broker had traded Korean client information with a Korean broker. Another lawmaker on the committee said he had never used a KB Kookmin credit card, but that his personal information has still been stolen. He had traced the leak to a single transaction made 20 years ago at a KB Kookmin bank. He said there should be laws imposing harsher punishments on firms that do not control the way client data is shared among institutions and their affiliates. Finance Minister Hyun Ho-seok said the government is doing all it can to prevent additional leaks in the future.
We are planning to thoroughly overhaul the way we penalize companies that are responsible for data breaches. We are also working with other government bodies on related legislation.
The government is also planning to impose hefty fines of up to 1% of a company's total sales if they are subject to future data breaches. CEOs from the three credit card firms KB Kookmin, Lotte, and Nongyup, from which the personal data of up to 20 million Koreans was leaked last month, said they had strengthened monitoring of their employees and established new policies to better control the sharing of customer information between affiliates. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The Islamist militant group responsible for Sunday's bus bombing in northeastern Egypt that killed 4 people, including 3 Koreans, has warned all tourists to leave the Sinai Peninsula by Thursday or risk being subject to further attacks. In a statement posted on jihadist websites, the Al-Qaeda-linked Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, based in Sinai, also said one of its members successfully blew up the tourist bus heading towards Israel, then declared an economic war against the Egyptian government. Insurgency has intensified since the Egyptian military overthrew Islamist President Mohamed Morsi in July of last year. But the militants, who mostly targeted soldiers until now, are trying to batter Egypt's fragile economy by orchestrating attacks on tourists. 9 people have been killed as violent clashes between Ukrainian protesters and police returned to the streets of Kiev on Tuesday in the worst outbreak of violence since demonstrations erupted against the President Viktor Yanukovych in November. Ukrainian police say 7 civilians and 2 policemen died as the authorities used rubber bullets, smoke and water cannons on protesters and clashed with civilians on the barricades surrounding the capital's Independence Square. Scores of police and protesters were injured, with demonstrators throwing paving stones, fireworks and patrol bombs at police. Earlier on Tuesday, the authorities had set protesters an early evening deadline to end street disorder or face, quote, tough measures. The European Union's top foreign policy chief, Catherine Ashton, said on Tuesday that she was very worried about the escalation in violence. And on a lighter note, there's never a shortage of art to enjoy here in Seoul, and this week is no exception. From traditional and modern craft works to the private collection of a former American soldier who was stationed on the peninsula during the Korean War, our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won reports.
At Culture Station 284 in central Seoul, a former train station turned art gallery, more than 360 pieces of traditional and modern Korean craft works by some 100 artists are now on display. They include traditional craft art pieces by late Korean masters, such as lacquerware inlaid with mother of pearl, as well as contemporary pieces like collaborative craft works that incorporate elements of light art and installation art.
Korea's craft arts have many sub-areas, from textiles and wood to metalworks. My work is based on intense sewing by hand, which is the groundwork of any textile craft.
The exhibition is free of charge and will be open through March 9th, except on Mondays. The highlights of a private Korean art collection are currently on display in Seoul, 1 month ahead of a Korean art sale scheduled for March at Christie's in New York. The auction will mostly focus on the collection of Robert Moore, one of the most well-known Western collectors of Korean art. He's in Korea this week to show about a dozen pieces from his 135-item collection. Since his first visit to Korea as a soldier in the 1950s, Moore started collecting antique Korean art pieces from porcelain jars to folding screens. He says it's the unique features of Korean art that have drawn him in.
Natural, spontaneous, and made to be used by everybody, including the court and the most humble people. They can be very good or they can be just ordinary things, but the very good things, as you see in this gallery, are special, and that's what attracted me, and that's why I've been devoted to it.
The Seoul preview will continue until Wednesday at 신세계 Gallery in central Seoul. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
With just 5 days left until the Sochi Winter Olympics wrap up, more and more attention is being drawn to the next Winter Games in the Korean resort town of Pyeongchang. For fans wanting to learn more about the next host city, there's a special place at Olympic Park to get a preview. Our sports reporter Song Ji-sun followed this report from Sochi.
The spirit of the Olympics is alive and well in Sochi. But just a few minutes after entering Olympic Park, you can also get a sense of what the 2018 Winter Games will be like.
The Pyeongchang House is just before the main competition venues at the Olympic Park. Athletes and sports fans can get a preview of what the Winter Olympics will look like at Korea's Alpine City less than 4 years from now.
From learning about Pyeongchang's location on the Korean peninsula and experiencing Korean medicine to watching cultural performances every day, visitors can get a better idea of the host city and the nation of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. The venue is especially popular among Russians who are curious about the city that will take the reins in 4 years.
I think that it will be good Olympic Games and maybe better than now. I hope that I will be in these Olympic Games in Pyeongchang.
and it's not too early to think about Pyeongchang. Athletes who have already wrapped up their games at Sochi are now setting their sights on Pyeongchang, and so are their families.
We're parents of an athlete at these games, and I'm very, very impressed. I mean, obviously, they're quite ready for the Olympics. There's no question about that.
After hitting the 100,000 visitor mark on Saturday, Pyeongchang House is rising as a must-see spot among Olympic fans.
Over 15,000 visitors drop by at the Pyeongchang House a day, meaning 1 out of 5 people in Olympic Park drop by. They get surprisingly interested after viewing the exhibition. And more than 500 Russians have already requested that they'd love to volunteer at the 2018 Pyeongchang Games.
Visitor number 201,800 to the Pyeongchang House, or 2018 with 2 zeros on the end, will win a free flight to and from the Games if the winner wants to volunteer at the 2018 Games. 송지선, Arirang News, Sochi.
And a Golden Wednesday to you all as we kick off our Sochi coverage with the latest gold medal finish by the South Korean women's short track team during the 3,000-meter relay final on Tuesday. Now, it might have taken 11 days for the first short track gold, but the wait made it sweeter. With the team consisting of Shim Seok-ki, Park Seung-hee, Kim Ha-rang, and Cho Ri in the finals, they overcame an illegal block from a Chinese skater with 2 laps left as Shim Seok-ki raced to the finish line to claim the gold medal, as they finished the race with a final time of 4 minutes, 9.49 seconds. Now, Kong Sang-jung, who raced in the place of Kim Ha-rang in the semifinals, joined them in the podium as well, as Korea claims their first relay gold in 8 years and their 5th in 7 Olympics so far. And now moving on to the men's 10,000-meter speed skating event, where Lee Sang-hoon went to the race trying to defend his title, but in the end, he fell just short. And just like the 5,000-meter event, fatigue hits the South Korean speed skater late in the race as he drops down to 4th place after coming in at a final time of 13 minutes, 11.68 seconds. And once again, the Netherlands proved to be the powerhouse in the sport as 3 Dutch skaters finished on the podium, including Joy Bergsma, who finished with a new Olympic record time of 12 minutes, 44.45 seconds for the gold, followed by Sven Kramer and Bob De Jong. And now today marks the 12th day since the competitions kicked off in the Sochi Winter Olympics. And on day 12, not just for the Korean fans, but for fans worldwide, they'll finally get to see Kim Ha-na defend her title in the women's figure skating event. Now with the event kicking off at 7 p.m. Sochi time, fans in Korea might be up at midnight to catch Kim Ha-na competing in the short program as she's set to go 5th in Group 3. And with Kim Ha-na looking to add a 2nd consecutive gold medal in the event, fans will have to wait until 9:24 p.m. Sochi time or 2:24 a.m. Thursday morning Korea time. And finally, let's take a look at the current medal count after 11 days of competition at the Sochi Winter Games. Of course, taking a look here, we see that Germany is still on top with 8 gold medals, and Norway up there now with 2nd with 7 gold medals, with Netherlands flying high with 6 gold medals. Now Russia drops down to 5th after a day, and Korea moves up a few spots to 15th overall with 2 gold medals in Sochi. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. I'm Ijeon with your latest weather forecast. Well, today is Usu, according to a solar term, which means more snow than rain and feeling spring in the air. And it does feel like spring is in the air lately, and today's weather conditions should be similar to what we had yesterday. And I know it's been a while since we saw a dazzling sunshine, and today will not be a day to see the full sun either, but it will be sunnier than yesterday. And there is no snow in store for part of the east, but the heavy snowfall will return on Thursday. Now, as the day gets warmer and longer, it's not harder to notice more people spending some time outdoor. And also, the KMA announced that there will not be a dramatic drop in temperatures any longer, meaning the winter is coming to an end and spring is definitely around the corner. With that, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low in Seoul and Gwangju is at -2, but will get up to 5 and 8 respectively. And Daegu will see a high of 6, while Busan will top out at 7 this afternoon. Now, for other regions, it looks like Jeju will climb up to 6, Daejeon will rise to 7, while the top temperature on Mount Keungang will be at -7. Now, that's all for me at this hour, and let's send it back to Yusan in the studio.
Thank you, Jiyeon, for that. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thank you for watching.